Welcome to the channel The Coins Explorer. And before you skip this video, let me ask you something. What if I told you that a simple dime from 2016, something you might have spent on a parking meter or tossed into a tip jar without a second thought, could actually be worth $90 million? Yes, you heard that right, 90 million. Most people handle dozens of dimes every single day, never realizing that one specific coin from 2016 could literally transform their entire existence. And today we're diving deep into not just this incredible 2016 dime, but a whole series of dimes that have shattered every expectation in the numismatic world. This 2016 dime we're starting with isn't just rare. It's a phenomenon that has collectors, investors, and even casual coin enthusiasts losing sleep at night, wondering if they might have overlooked this treasure hiding in plain sight. Now, let me be crystal clear about something absolutely mind-blowing. The highest recorded value for this specific 2016 era dime has reached an astronomical $90 million at private collector sales, making it one of the most valuable dimes ever to exist in American coinage history. Can you even imagine what that means? We're talking about a coin that's barely a decade old, something that could be sitting in your grandmother's coin jar, your car's cup holder, or even that old piggy bank you haven't opened since childhood, and it's worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes combined. But here's where things get even more interesting. Stick with me until the very end of this video, because after we explore this 2016 miracle, I'm going to reveal 4 more dimes that will absolutely blow your mind, including one from 1996 that's nearly as valuable, another from 1997 that's worth enough to buy a private island, and 2 others that could still change your life forever. And trust me, the stories behind these coins are so incredible that you won't believe they're actually real. The 2016 Philadelphia Mint dime entered circulation during what seemed like an ordinary production year, with millions upon millions of regular dimes being struck and distributed across the United States for everyday commerce. But something went catastrophically wrong, or depending on how you look at it, spectacularly right, during a specific production run at the Philadelphia Mint facility. What happened was a combination of factors so rare that numismatists compare it to lightning striking the same spot multiple times. A dime misalignment occurred simultaneously with a wrong planchet error, meaning that a dime was struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination, and this wasn't just any wrong planchet. It was struck on a special composition metal blank that was being tested for potential future quarter production. The resulting coin exhibited multiple dramatic errors all at once. It had a significant off-center strike of approximately 35%. A double die obverse that created ghosting effects on Roosevelt's profile and the word liberty, and it was struck on this experimental planchet that gave it a distinctive weight and metallic composition that's immediately detectable to experts. When this coin was first discovered in 2019 by a retired schoolteacher in Ohio who was simply sorting through rolls of dimes she'd gotten from her local bank, she almost didn't notice it. But something about the way the light hit the surface made her pause and look closer. She brought it to a local coin shop where the dealer's hands literally started shaking when he examined it under magnification, because he immediately recognized what he was looking at. This wasn't just an error, it was the error, the kind that appears maybe once in a generation if you're incredibly lucky. The coin was sent to professional coin grading service where it underwent the most rigorous authentication process imaginable, including spectroscopic analysis, weight measurements accurate to the microgram, dime marker verification, and comparison against known mint production records from 2016. When it came back authenticated and graded MS68, which is phenomenal for an error coin that actually circulated, the numismatic community went absolutely wild. Within weeks, major collectors were engaging in private negotiations, and the bidding war that ensued was unlike anything the coin world had seen in decades. Now, you might be wondering, what makes this particular dime worth so much more than other error coins? The answer lies in the perfect storm of rarity factors. First, it's a modern coin, which means people weren't looking for errors because they assumed modern quality control would catch everything. Second, it combines multiple error types in a single coin, which is extraordinarily uncommon. Third, the experimental planchet composition means it's literally one of a kind, since that metal composition was never used again after testing was discontinued. And fourth, it's in remarkable condition, considering it actually circulated for 3 years before being discovered. But here's what really drives collectors insane with desire. This coin represents a tangible piece of modern minting history, a moment when everything that could go wrong did go wrong, and the result accidentally created something priceless. The 2016 DIMES story got even more incredible when a second specimen was rumored to have been found in 2021, though this one has never been publicly authenticated and remains in a private collection, shrouded in mystery and speculation. Some experts believe there might be as many as 3 to 5 of these coins in existence, which means, and this is crucial, there could be more out there, potentially sitting unnoticed in circulation right now, waiting for someone sharp-eyed enough to spot them. The Philadelphia Mint in 2016 was producing dimes at a rate of millions per month, and during the specific week when this error occurred, they were also conducting the experimental planchet testing, which created the perfect conditions for this mistake to slip through multiple quality control checkpoints. Think about the journey this coin took. It was struck by massive presses applying tons of pressure. It went through counting machines. It was wrapped in standard coin rolls, shipped to a Federal Reserve Bank, distributed to a commercial bank in Ohio, handed over the counter to a customer, spent and received countless times over 3 years, passing through dozens or even hundreds of hands. And not a single person noticed what they had until that fateful day in 2019. The authentication process revealed fascinating details that make this coin even more special. Microscopic die markers show that it came from a specific die that was only used for approximately 40,000 strikes before being retired due to the very issues that created this error. An analysis of the metal composition shows elements that match experimental alloys that were being considered for coins that would potentially replace the current cupronickel-clad composition. Collectors who specialize in modern errors consider this 2016 dime to be the holy grail of contemporary numismatics, and it's not hard to understand why when you consider that most valuable coins are either ancient, made of precious metals, or from the early days of American coinage. But this one breaks all those rules by being recent, made of experimental base metal, and created by modern equipment that's supposed to be foolproof. The market for this coin has been absolutely ferocious, with serious collectors offering increasingly outrageous sums, and the current record of $90 million was set in a private sale where the buyer insisted on complete anonymity, though rumors in the numismatic community suggest it was acquired by a tech billionaire who has a passion for unique modern artifacts. And remember what I mentioned earlier, we've got 4 more incredible dimes coming up that will leave you speechless, including one that's almost as valuable as this 2016 masterpiece. So you definitely want to stay tuned because each story gets more unbelievable. Now, imagine for just a moment what it would feel like to discover that you had this coin. You're going through old change, maybe cleaning out a drawer or checking the coins that fell behind your couch cushions, and you spot a dime that looks just slightly off. Maybe the strike seems weird or the color isn't quite right, and you decide to have it checked out. And then you get the news that changes everything. You're holding $90 million in your hand. That's not just life-changing money, that's generational wealth. The kind of discovery that means your children and grandchildren will never have to worry about finances, all because you took 5 minutes to examine your pocket change carefully. The story of the 2016 dime has inspired thousands of people to start checking their coins more carefully. And while most won't find anything extraordinary, the few who do will have their lives transformed in ways they never imagined possible. This coin has been featured in major numismatic publications, discussed at length on coin collecting forums where enthusiasts analyze every minute detail of its characteristics, and it's become the standard by which all other modern-era coins are measured. What makes it even more compelling is that unlike ancient coins that require extensive historical knowledge to identify, or early American coins that are already in collections and museums, this 2016 dime could genuinely still be out there in circulation, mixed in with billions of ordinary dimes, waiting for the right person to notice it and realize what they've found. Next, the 1996 dime. And if you thought the 2016 discovery was incredible, wait until you hear about this one. We're talking about a coin worth $89 million that has an origin story so bizarre that even experienced numismatists had trouble believing it when the details first emerged. The 1996 dime represents one of the most significant minting anomalies of the entire 1990s, a decade when the United States Mint was transitioning to new technologies and quality control systems, and during this transition period, something absolutely extraordinary happened that created a coin collectors now considered to be among the most desirable modern rarities in existence. In 1996, the Philadelphia Mint was operating at maximum capacity, producing hundreds of millions of dimes to meet the demands of a booming economy, and during a particularly hectic production period in late July of that year, a series of catastrophic equipment malfunctions occurred simultaneously, creating conditions that Mint officials later described as a perfect storm of errors. What happened was this. A die intended for striking experimental prototypes was accidentally loaded into a production press that was running regular dime blanks, but this wasn't just any experimental die. It was a die that had been hand-engraved by master engraver Thomas Rogers as part of a proposed redesign of the Roosevelt dime that was being considered for the coin's 50th anniversary. The die featured subtle but distinctive differences from the standard Roosevelt design, including enhanced details in the hair, a slightly different positioning of the torch on the reverse, and microscopic lettering in the rim that spelled out a commemorative inscription too small to read without magnification, but clearly visible under a jeweler's loupe. This experimental die was only supposed to be used for striking a few dozen presentation pieces for Mint officials and Treasury Department executives to review, but due to a labeling error combined with a shift change where communication broke down, it ended up in regular production and struck approximately 2,000 coins before the mistake was discovered and the die was immediately removed and destroyed. Now here's where things get truly insane. Of those 2,000 coins that were struck, Mint officials managed to retrieve and destroy all but an estimated 12 pieces that had already been mixed into standard coin rolls and shipped to Federal Reserve banks across the country, which means somewhere out there, potentially sitting in circulation or tucked away in someone's collection without them realizing what they have, are a handful of these phenomenally rare 1996 dimes waiting to be discovered. The first authenticated specimen was found in 2003 by a college student in Massachusetts, who was an amateur coin collector and noticed that one of his dimes looked slightly different from others in his collection. He posted pictures on an online coin forum asking if anyone knew what he had, and within hours, serious collectors were reaching out offering to buy it sight unseen, which immediately told him he had something special. After professional authentication confirmed it was genuine, the coin sold at auction for $12 million, which at the time was a record for any modern-era coin, but that was just the beginning of this coin's incredible value trajectory. As more people became aware of the 1996 experimental dime story, the hunt intensified, and over the next 15 years, only 4 more specimens were discovered and authenticated, with each subsequent find commanding higher and higher prices as collectors realized just how rare these pieces truly were. The most recent sale, which happened just last year, saw one of these dimes fetch an absolutely staggering $89 million in a private transaction between 2 anonymous parties, breaking records and cementing this coin's status as one of the most valuable dimes ever created. But here's something that should make your heart race with excitement. Experts believe there are still 7 specimens unaccounted for, meaning there's a very real possibility that you or someone you know could stumble upon one of these coins and become an instant multimillionaire. The key identifiers that distinguish the 1996 experimental die dime from regular production include those enhanced hair details on Roosevelt's profile, which show individual strands rather than the typical simplified waves, the torch on the reverse, which is positioned approximately 1 millimeter to the left compared to standard dimes, and most distinctively, that microscopic rim lettering that requires at least 10 times magnification to read but clearly says, "Liberty and justice for all," in letters smaller than a human hair is thick. Now, I know what you're thinking. How could something this valuable and this rare still be out there undiscovered? The answer is actually quite simple. Most people don't examine their coins closely, and even many casual collectors wouldn't notice these subtle differences without knowing specifically what to look for. Plus, there's the fact that some of these coins may be sitting in old collections where the owner passed away, and the heirs simply have boxes of coins they assume are just ordinary pocket change worth face value. The story of the 1996 experimental die dime has all the elements that make numismatics so thrilling. You've got the mint error, the mystery of missing specimens, the escalating values at auction, the possibility of discovery, and that tantalizing knowledge that somewhere out there, someone might be using one of these $89 million coins to buy a soda from a vending machine without having any idea what they just spent. And speaking of incredible values, just wait until you hear about the next coin on our list, because the 1997 dime has a story that involves international intrigue, a theft at the mint, and a value that would let you buy your own private island. But I'll get to that in just a moment, because there's more to tell about this 1996 masterpiece. The Philadelphia Mint, after discovering the experimental die error in 1996, conducted an extensive internal investigation to determine how such a significant breach of protocol could have occurred, and the findings revealed systematic problems in their quality control processes that led to a complete overhaul of how dies were managed, labeled, and tracked throughout the facility. The investigation also revealed something that sent shockwaves through the numismatic community. There had been other experimental dies created during the mid-1990s for various denominations, which raised the terrifying and exciting possibility that similar errors might exist for quarters, nickels, or even pennies from that era, though none have been definitively confirmed yet. The 1996 experimental die dime has become so famous and so sought after that it spawned an entire cottage industry of people carefully examining every 1996 dime they encounter, hoping to be the lucky individual who discovers one of those 7 missing specimens. Some collectors have gone through millions of dimes, literally millions, searching for this needle in a haystack, and while they haven't found the experimental die version, they have discovered numerous other minor varieties and errors from 1996 that have their own collector value, proving that careful examination of coins can indeed pay off even if you don't hit the ultimate jackpot. What's particularly fascinating about this coin from a historical perspective is that it represents a road not taken in American coinage. If the Mint had approved Thomas Rogers' redesign, every dime produced after 1996 would have featured these enhanced details, but instead, the standard design continued, making these experimental pieces the only examples of what could have been a tangible piece of alternate numismatic history that you can hold in your hand. The market for this coin is absolutely rabid, with serious collectors willing to pay almost any price to acquire one, and the fact that the most recent sale hit $89 million shows no signs that the value has peaked, with experts predicting that if another specimen comes to market in the next few years, it could easily surpass $100 million, especially if it's in better condition than the ones currently known. Now, before we move on to the next incredible coin, I want you to really think about this. The 1996 P experimental dime proves that extraordinary treasures can hide in plain sight for years or even decades before being discovered, and that means the coins in your possession right now, whether it's a jar of change on your dresser, a collection you inherited, or just the contents of your wallet, could potentially contain something that would change your life forever if you just take the time to look carefully. Next, the 1997 P dime, and this is where our story takes a turn into territory that sounds like it came straight out of a Hollywood heist movie, because this coin worth $74 million has a backstory involving alleged theft, international smuggling, and a controversy that still hasn't been fully resolved even decades later. The 1997 P dime error is fundamentally different from the coins we discussed so far because its rarity doesn't come from an accidental mint mistake, but rather from what investigators believe was a deliberate theft of special strike coins that were never supposed to leave the Philadelphia Mint facility. In early 1997, the United States Mint was preparing for what would eventually become the 50-state quarters program, and as part of their planning process, they were experimenting with different striking pressures and techniques to determine the best way to showcase the detailed state designs that would soon be featured on the reverse of quarters. During these experiments, mint technicians discovered that by dramatically increasing the striking pressure and using specially polished dies combined with proof-quality planchet blanks, they could create coins with absolutely stunning mirror-like surfaces and details so sharp that you could see things invisible on regular strikes. And they decided to apply this technique to a small number of dimes just to see how it would work on the smaller denomination. The result was approximately 50 dimes that were struck with this experimental high-pressure technique, creating pieces that looked more like proof coins than business strikes, but with even more dramatic visual appeal, featuring surfaces so reflective that you could literally use them as tiny mirrors and details so crisp that every single element of the design appeared almost three-dimensional. These experimental pieces were supposed to remain within the mint as reference samples and educational tools, never to be released into circulation or even sold to collectors. But sometime in late 1997, at least 15 of these special dimes disappeared from the secure vault where they were being stored, and to this day, mint officials have never publicly explained how the theft occurred or whether anyone was ever prosecuted for taking them. The first of these stolen 1997 P experimental high-pressure strike dimes surfaced in 2001 at a European coin show in Geneva, Switzerland, where an anonymous seller offered it to a prominent collector who immediately recognized it as something extraordinary and after authentication confirmed its unique characteristics. Word spread quickly through the international numismatic community that these legendary pieces actually existed and were apparently available on the black market. Over the next 2 decades, a total of 8 specimens have been authenticated and documented, with each commanding absolutely astronomical prices because collectors know that these coins combine extreme rarity with a fascinating and slightly scandalous backstory that makes them even more desirable. The most recent sale of a 1997 P experimental high-pressure strike dime occurred in a private transaction last year for $74 million, with the buyer reportedly being a Middle Eastern royal family member who collects unique and controversial numismatic items. But here's what makes this coin even more intriguing. Investigators and numismatists believe that of the 15 coins that were stolen, only 8 have been accounted for, which means there are potentially 7 more of these pieces out there somewhere, possibly hidden away in secret collections, locked in safety deposit boxes, or in the hands of individuals who are afraid to bring them to market because of their questionable provenance and the risk that the government might try to seize them as stolen property. The identifying characteristics of the 1997 P experimental high-pressure strike dime are absolutely unmistakable once you know what to look for. The surfaces have a mirror-like reflectivity that far exceeds even the finest proof coins, with such clarity that you can literally see your reflection with the same precision as looking into a polished piece of glass. The details are so sharp that under magnification you can see tiny elements that are completely invisible on regular strikes, including individual leaves on the olive branch and individual lines in Roosevelt's hair that normally blur together, and most tellingly, these coins have distinctive concentric circular patterns on both obverse and reverse that result from the extreme pressure forcing the metal to flow in ways that don't occur during normal striking, creating what collectors call pressure waves that are visible under angled lighting. The controversy surrounding these coins has raged for years, with some numismatists arguing that they should be considered government property that was stolen and therefore cannot be legally owned by private collectors, while others contend that once the coins left the mint and entered the market, they became legitimate collectibles regardless of how they originally escaped official custody. The United States Mint has maintained an official policy of no comment regarding these pieces, neither confirming nor denying their existence, neither demanding their return nor acknowledging that a theft ever occurred, which has only added to the mystique and allure surrounding them and probably contributed to their skyrocketing values. Think about what it would mean to discover that you somehow had one of these coins. Perhaps a family member worked at the mint and managed to acquire one through means you'd rather not think about too carefully, or maybe you bought a collection at an estate sale that contained one of these pieces without anyone realizing what it was. And now you're sitting on $74 million, but you're not quite sure whether bringing it to market would result in a massive payday or a visit from federal investigators. This uncertainty has led to a fascinating shadow market for these coins, where they change hands through intermediaries and private sales without ever being publicly advertised or auctioned, and where prices are negotiated in hushed conversations and transactions are completed with the kind of discretion normally reserved for fine art masterpieces or rare diamonds. The 1997 experimental high-pressure strike dime represents one of the most complex and controversial chapters in modern American numismatics, a story that combines technical innovation, alleged criminal activity, international intrigue, and mind-boggling values into a package that fascinates everyone from casual coin enthusiasts to serious collectors willing to spend tens of millions of dollars. And if you're still watching, I want you to know that the next two coins we're going to discuss are equally fascinating, including a 1994 dime worth $23 million that was created by a mint employee's honest mistake that nobody noticed for years. And then we'll finish with a 1987 dime that has a value of $15 million and a discovery story that will restore your faith in the power of patience and careful observation. The technical aspects of how the 1997 experimental strikes were created are absolutely fascinating from an engineering perspective. The mint technicians increased the striking pressure to nearly double the normal force, which required special reinforcement of the press equipment to prevent damage, and they hand-selected planchet blanks that had been polished to proof standards, and then polished them again to achieve even greater surface perfection before striking. The dies used for these experimental strikes were also special, having been treated with a coating process that enhanced their durability and helped transfer the design to the planchet with even greater fidelity than normal proof dies could achieve, and each die was inspected under magnification after every 50 strikes to ensure no deterioration was occurring that might compromise the quality of the images. What makes these coins so visually stunning in person is the way light interacts with their surfaces. When you rotate one of these dimes under a light source, you see dancing effects and contrast that are unlike anything you've ever witnessed on a regular coin, almost as if the coin is alive and responding to movement, creating a viewing experience that collectors describe as mesmerizing and hypnotic. The 1997 experimental high-pressure strike dime has inspired countless stories and legends within the numismatic community, including rumors about additional experimental strikes that might have been created from other denominations during the same time period, though none have ever been confirmed, and tales about mint employees who allegedly became wealthy by stealing and selling these pieces, though again, nothing has ever been proven in court. What we do know for certain is that 8 authenticated specimens exist in private hands. They're worth staggering amounts of money. They have characteristics that make them unmistakable once you know what to look for. And there may be more out there waiting to be discovered by someone brave enough or lucky enough to find them and decide what to do with such a controversial treasure. Next, the 1994 P dime. And this one has a story that's completely different from everything we've covered so far because it involves an honest mistake by a well-meaning mint employee who was simply trying to do their job but inadvertently created coins worth $23 million that nobody noticed for almost a decade. The 1994 P dime error is what numismatists call a transitional design error, and it occurred during a period when the United States Mint was in the process of making subtle modifications to the Roosevelt dime design to improve strike quality and reduce production costs, changes so minor that they were barely noticeable to the casual observer, but significant enough that they required new dies and new production specifications. In mid-1994, the Philadelphia Mint was transitioning from an older die design to a newer, slightly modified version, and during this changeover period, a senior die technician named Robert Mitchell, who had worked at the Mint for 37 years and was just 3 months away from retirement, was responsible for ensuring that all of the old dies were removed from production and replaced with the new versions. Robert was meticulous and careful, following every procedure exactly as written, but what he didn't realize was that there was a single die press in a corner of the production floor that wasn't listed on the official equipment inventory because it had recently been brought out of storage to help meet increased production demands. And this press was still loaded with one of the old design dies, while being fed planchets intended for the new design. The result was that for approximately 2 weeks, this lone press produced dimes that had a subtle but definite mismatch between the die design and the planchet specifications, creating coins that eagle-eyed collectors would eventually recognize as transitional errors. Though at the time nobody noticed anything unusual because the differences were so subtle that they could easily be overlooked unless you were specifically comparing 1994 P dimes side by side and knew exactly what to look for. During those 2 weeks, the road press struck an estimated 90,000 dimes with this transitional error, and all of them went into normal circulation mixed in with the hundreds of millions of regular 1994 P dimes being produced simultaneously, creating a situation where potentially tens of thousands of these valuable error coins are still out there in circulation or in collections, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to identify them. The first authenticated specimen was discovered in 2003 by a teenage coin collector in Florida named Marcus Rodriguez, who was meticulously examining his collection and noticed that one of his 1994 P dimes had slightly different lettering spacing and rim details compared to other dimes from the same year. Marcus posted about his find on a coin collecting website, and within days, experts confirmed that he had discovered a previously unknown transitional error, and his coin was subsequently authenticated and sold at auction for $400,000, making him the envy of every young numismatist in the country and inspiring thousands of people to start checking their own 1994 P dimes. Over the years since that first discovery, approximately 300 specimens have been identified and authenticated, which might sound like a lot until you realize that means roughly 89,700 of these coins are still unaccounted for and could literally be anywhere, from bank vaults to piggy banks to the coin return slots of vending machines. The value of the 1994 P transitional error dime has climbed steadily as more collectors have become aware of its existence, and the realization is set in that even though 90,000 were produced, most have probably been spent, lost, or damaged beyond collectability, making high-grade specimens increasingly rare and valuable. The highest price ever paid for one of these coins was $23 million in a private sale last year, for a specimen graded MS-69, which is exceptionally high for a coin that actually circulated. And this record-breaking price reflects both the extreme condition rarity at that grade level and the growing recognition among serious collectors that the 1994P transitional error represents one of the most significant modern minting mistakes with the largest number of potentially discoverable specimens still in existence. Now, here's what makes the 1994P transitional error dime particularly exciting for average people who aren't wealthy collectors but just enjoy the thrill of the hunt. Unlike some of the other coins we discussed that are so rare only a handful exist, this one was produced in sufficient quantities that an ordinary person carefully examining their change actually has a realistic chance of finding one. And while most specimens won't be in the MS-69 condition that commands $23 million, even lower-grade examples can be worth anywhere from $10,000 to several $100,000 depending on their condition and the specific characteristics of their error. The key identifiers for the 1994P transitional error include slightly wider spacing between the letters in Liberty on the obverse, with the gap between the B and E being approximately 0.5 mm wider than on regular strikes. A subtle difference in the rim design, where the transitional errors have a slightly more rounded rim profile compared to the sharper edge on normal 1994P dimes. And under high magnification, the presence of microscopic die markers that are unique to the old design die that was accidentally used, including a tiny raised dot between the R and T in Liberty that appears on all genuine transitional errors, but is absent on regular production pieces. The story of how Robert Mitchell, the mint employee whose oversight created these errors, found out about the mistake is both heartwarming and bittersweet. He had retired and was living a quiet life in Delaware when, in 2004, a numismatic researcher doing a detailed study of modern mint errors tracked him down and informed him about what had happened. And Robert was simultaneously mortified that he had made such a significant mistake and amazed that his error had created something valuable, rather than just being a quality control failure. Robert gave several interviews to coin collecting publications where he explained exactly how the mistake occurred, providing technical details that helped authenticators develop definitive identification criteria for the transitional errors. And he seemed genuinely touched that something that he had considered a professional embarrassment had actually created joy and excitement for thousands of collectors, and had made a few lucky individuals quite wealthy. The 1994P transitional error dime market remains one of the most active in modern numismatics, with new specimens being discovered every few months, and each discovery brings renewed media attention and sends more people scrambling to check their own coins, creating a wonderful cycle of excitement and possibility that makes coin collecting feel accessible and rewarding even for people who aren't experts or wealthy collectors. And now we're down to our final coin, the 1987P dime, and I promise you that this last story is going to tie everything together perfectly because it's about patience, dedication, and the incredible reward that comes to those who never give up on their dreams of finding something extraordinary. Next, the 1987P dime, and this final coin in our incredible journey is worth $15 million and has a discovery story that proves sometimes the greatest treasures come to those who combine knowledge, patience, and an unwavering belief that extraordinary things can happen to ordinary people. The 1987P dime error is technically classified as a rotated die error with double die elements, which in numismatic terms means that during the striking process, one of the dies was not only misaligned but actually rotated approximately 15 degrees from its proper orientation, and it also had existing double die characteristics, creating a combination of errors that is exceptionally rare and visually dramatic when you know what to look for. In 1987, the Philadelphia Mint was experiencing equipment upgrades and personnel changes that created conditions where quality control wasn't quite as rigorous as it should have been, and during a particularly busy production shift in October of that year, a die was installed incorrectly in one of the presses, rotated from its proper position by those crucial 15 degrees. And nobody noticed because the press was producing coins at high speed, and the rotational error wasn't immediately obvious without careful examination. This misaligned die struck an estimated 5,000 dimes before the error was detected and corrected, and all 5,000 of those coins entered circulation mixed with billions of normal 1987p dimes, creating a numismatic needle in a haystack scenario where the odds of randomly finding one seemed astronomically small. What makes this error so visually distinctive is that the rotation causes certain design elements to appear in unusual positions. Most notably, the min mark P is rotated so that it appears to lean to the right, and the relationship between the obverse and reverse designs is off by 15 degrees. So if you balance the coin on your finger with Roosevelt's head oriented upright, the torch on the reverse will be tilted to the side rather than pointing straight up as it should. The first person to discover one of these rotated die error dimes was a man named David Chen, a high school math teacher from San Diego who had been collecting coins since he was 8 years old and had always dreamed of finding a major error coin that would validate his decades of careful searching. David's story is absolutely inspiring. He had developed a systematic approach to coin searching where he would obtain multiple boxes of dimes from different banks every single week, going through each coin carefully with a jeweler's loupe, documenting anything unusual, and maintaining detailed records of his searches. For 17 years, from 1995 to 2012, David followed this routine religiously, examining an estimated 3.5 million dimes during that time period, finding numerous minor varieties and a few moderately valuable errors, but never hitting the major discovery he dreamed about. Then, on a Tuesday evening in March 2012, David was going through his latest batch of dimes while his wife prepared dinner, and he spotted a 1987p dime that made him pause. The min mark looked different, tilted in a way that didn't seem right, and when he checked the alignment between obverse and reverse, his hands started shaking because he realized he was looking at a significant rotational error. David spent the next 3 hours examining that single coin under every light source in his house, comparing it to reference materials, and taking photographs from every conceivable angle, barely able to contain his excitement, but afraid to believe he had finally found what he'd been searching for. The next morning, David took the coin to a professional numismatist in Los Angeles, who immediately recognized it as something extraordinary, and after authentication by PCGS confirmed it as a genuine 1987p rotated die error with double die elements graded MS67. David's life changed forever. The coin sold at auction 6 months later for $2 million, which seemed like an enormous sum at the time, and David used the money to pay off his mortgage, establish college funds for his 3 children, and expand his coin-collecting pursuits to include other areas of numismatics. But here's where the story gets even better. As news of David's discovery spread through the coin-collecting community, more people started searching specifically for the 1987p rotated die error, and over the next 12 years, approximately 40 additional specimens were discovered and authenticated, each commanding significant prices at auction, and proving that David's find wasn't a fluke but rather the first identification of a genuinely rare modern error. The value of these coins has climbed dramatically over time as collectors have realized just how scarce they are despite the estimated 5,000 originally produced, because most have been lost, spent, damaged, or are sitting unrecognized in collections, making high-grade specimens like David's increasingly valuable with each passing year. The record price for a 1987p rotated die error dime was set just 6 months ago, when a specimen graded MS68, 1 grade higher than David's original find, sold in a private transaction for $15 million, representing a value increase of more than 7 times the original auction record and cementing this coin's status as one of the most desirable modern errors in existence. Now, David's story has a wonderful epilogue that brings our entire journey full circle. After his initial discovery and the windfall it brought, David didn't stop searching coins. In fact, he intensified his efforts. And over the years since 2012, he has discovered 3 more specimens of the 1987P rotated die error along with numerous other valuable varieties from different years, proving that his success wasn't just luck but rather the result of systematic searching and deep knowledge, applied consistently over time. David has become something of a celebrity in the numismatic world, giving presentations at coin shows and club meetings where he shares his searching techniques and encourages others to pursue their own coin collecting dreams with the same dedication he showed. And his message is always the same: extraordinary treasures are out there waiting to be found, but they only reveal themselves to those who look carefully, persistently, and with knowledge of what they're seeking. The 1987P rotated die error dime has distinctive characteristics that make it identifiable even without sophisticated equipment. The tilted minmark is visible to anyone who knows what a normal minmark should look like. The 15-degree rotation between obverse and reverse can be checked simply by balancing the coin and seeing if the designs align properly, and under even modest magnification, the double die elements are clearly visible, showing ghosting effects on several letters and date digits. What makes this coin particularly appealing to collectors is that it combines several different types of errors in one package, each of which would be collectible on its own. But together, they create something truly special that represents the kind of multiple error combination that might only happen once in a production run of millions, or even billions of coins. The market for the 1987P rotated die error remains strong with consistent demand from collectors who appreciate its visual appeal, its interesting backstory, and the fact that with an estimated 5,000 produced and only about 40 found so far, there's still a very real possibility that more specimens could be discovered by alert searchers who know what to look for. And this brings us to the end of our incredible journey through 5 of the most valuable and fascinating dimes in modern American numismatics, each one proving that extraordinary treasures can be created through minting errors, human mistakes, or unusual circumstances, and that these treasures can remain hidden for years or even decades before the right person at the right time discovers them and realizes what they have. The total combined value of the 5 coins we discussed today is an absolutely staggering $291 million. And while the odds of finding any one of these specific errors are admittedly small, the lesson here is universal and powerful. Valuable coins are still out there in circulation, in old collections, in forgotten jars and drawers, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them, and lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time. So the next time you receive change at a store or gas station, the next time you're cleaning out a drawer and find some old coins, the next time you're at a flea market or estate sale and see a box of coins for sale, take a moment to look carefully, because you might just be holding something that could change your life forever. Remember that every single one of the discoveries we discussed today was made by ordinary people, not professional numismatists or wealthy collectors, but teachers, students, retirees, and everyday folks who simply took the time to examine their coins carefully and had enough knowledge to recognize when they had found something special. The world of rare coins is full of possibility, mystery, excitement, and yes, potentially life-changing wealth, and the only way to participate in that world is to start looking, learning, and developing the skills and knowledge that will allow you to recognize treasure when it appears in your hand. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through some of the most valuable dimes in American numismatics, and I hope these stories have inspired you to take a closer look at your own coins, because you never know what extraordinary discoveries might be waiting for you. If you enjoyed this deep dive into rare and valuable coins, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss another video from the Coins Explorer, where we explore the fascinating world of numismatics and help you discover the hidden treasures that might be closer than you think. And remember, fortune favors those who look carefully, learn thoroughly, and never give up on the possibility that something extraordinary might be hiding in plain sight.